Fellow actors, writers, directors, and production crew, welcome to Small Talk with Tony, the interview series where we sit down with people in the biz to make small talk. I'm your host, the owner, chief storyteller, and the Tony behind Tony Video. Now, over the course of this series, you will hear stories and personal experiences from people just like you. So, let's make some small talk.
Actions always find a way to shine brighter than the things you say.
So, today's guest is the lovely Lisa Ludwig. Lisa is the Executive Director of Shakespeare in Delaware Park. She is also the co-chair of the Theater District Association of Buffalo. Now, she has toured nationally and has been involved with many theater productions as a director, as a producer, and as an actor. Not to mention, she is a multiple Artie Award winner. Now, I've had the pleasure of sharing the stage with Lisa in First Look Buffalo's production of The AI at Delphi. So will everyone please join me in giving a very warm welcome to my next guest. Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time for some small talk.
Well, thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Well, Lisa, it was great to finally get a chance to work with you and share the stage, but I'm super excited to make small talk because you have a lot of great experiences that can help a lot of the people tuning in. And I'm also curious to know a little bit more about you. So, like with all of our previous guests on the show, how did you get your start in the industry?
Well, it started out when I was very young. I was about 6 or 7, running through the house with a long black towel on my head, singing Cher songs, doing a little and my parents knew they were doomed. That continued on. I think my first directing job was in first grade. I think I directed the whole class. I think we did Stone Soup. It was a very important production for Alden Elementary School. And then it just went on from there. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And my parents were not theater people. They didn't understand where this was coming from, but were uber supportive. And I did some theater in school, and then I started auditioning outside of school. And back then, it was 100 years ago, there wasn't as much theater in Buffalo as there is now. So I moved to New York City right out of high school to go make it big. So that was kind of the journey, and ended up back here.
Yeah, there have been several guests I've interviewed that have moved to the city as a part of their journey, but what was your experience like moving to the city?
The reason I went as a young person was there weren't a lot of opportunities in Buffalo to act. There were a couple of there were jobs here, and I realized that if I wanted to do theater, I might have to go somewhere else to do it as a living. So I moved, as I said, to New York City right when I was 19. And it's very funny coming from a very small town. I grew up in Alden. I had never even been to New York City before I moved to New York City. So I just picked up and moved. So once I got there, you realize that's what every small town person does from every small town across the world, moves to New York. And I always say my first audition in New York, I was auditioning for Little Shop of Horrors for the part of Audrey. And I went in my little blonde wig and my little black dress. And there were 500 other people that looked exactly like me auditioning for those roles. So it was a big awakening, right, when you get to New York. But it was awesome, and I got to do some things when I was there. I worked on the Spirit of New York cruise ship. I did some touring, doing children's theater, National Theater Works, and it was all awesome experiences. But then after I got married, I was expecting my first child. We decided to move back to New York, or to Buffalo, for just a year, because my family was here. I wanted to have the baby here, and then we would decide what to do. And, my baby's now 34. So ended up staying here in Buffalo because there were a lot of opportunities. We started a lot of opportunities back, 34 years ago, and now Buffalo is what it is.
That's interesting because you had a very similar trajectory to the previous guests that had moved to the city. So, you came back talk to us about the landscape of Buffalo theater at that time. What was it like, and how did you get your start in becoming a producer?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So when we moved back to Buffalo, I had my daughter Sydney, and was doing, full-time jobs as well, but still wanted to do theater. But that's when theater was starting. Summer Fair Musical Fair. We had started that company, Summer Fair, which turned into Musical Fair. BUA, Irish Classical. All those theaters were starting. Kavinoki was already established. Alleyway was already established. But if they didn't know you, how do you get into these theaters, right? So I was known very much as a musical theater girl at that time. So to try to get, a job at the Kavinoki or Alleyway, any of those, if they didn't know your work. So Terry Kimmel, who is a very good friend of mine, became my partner with Freefall Productions. We literally decided to start a theater company so Lisa Ludwig could star in shows and Terry could direct them. I mean, it's honestly why we started, because I wanted to be able to do work and have other theaters see it, so hopefully I could work at those theaters. And we started out, I think the first show that we did was Frankie and Johnny at the Claire de Lune, which we had produced over at the Art has it now, but it used to be the old Theater Loft, which was Ujima's company. That was the first show we did, hugely successful. Then we did the Kathy and Mo show, which actually ended running for 3 years. We did a first run of it that went a long time. Then it kept going. So we would do it Mondays and Sundays over at the old Garvey's. Anyhow, it was a phenomenon. It was great. We did some other shows in between there, but then luckily I started working at other theater companies, which was awesome. So then we just, we decided to not do Freefall anymore, because that was not my goal. It wasn't to produce. It was to act and direct. So I think our last show that we produced for Freefall was 1997. And then onward we went, where I was lucky to be able to work at Irish and the Kavinoki and Ujima and the New Phoenix and Alleyway. I was very, very lucky to be able to do that until 2006, where Saul Elkin approached me and asked if I wanted to start working for Shakespeare in Delaware Park. And that's how that came to be.
It's funny because I'm comparing everybody's experiences that I've interviewed, and there's this through line of just doing something out of necessity. But that ultimately benefited everybody in the long run. So this theme of creating your own opportunities, is very apparent. And with you, it seemed that producing allowed you to create your own acting opportunities. So as you became a producer, what did you learn? And what are some of the misconceptions about producing you think people have, especially if they've never done it before?
It's interesting. Again, my journey within producing. So when Freefall started, really, as I said, the producing aspect was it to do good work, to do good dramatic work, but something that could highlight myself and my directing partner, Terry, right? That was our goal. So then in the years between that, when other theater companies would ask me to possibly, would you like to be involved administratively? I always said no, because I think it's hard as an actor for it to not become about you, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'll work for your theater company because, oh, I would love to do this show, this show, this show. That'd be great. I hope I can act and direct there. That's why I want to work for your theater company. And the thing for me and Shakespeare and why it became a good fit, I'd worked at Shakespeare before as an actor. And I am uberly in love with everything Shakespeare in Delaware Park is about. Free, accessible theater, keeping Shakespeare alive, all of that. But there was never a moment in my mind that I went, oh, if only I could be Shakespeare's first female, Titus, or anything, or Macbeth. I didn't have that goal. My goal as an administrator is to keep Saul Elkin's legacy for this theater company going. And when he approached me to ask me to be a part of it, that's when I went, yeah, I think I can do that, because there's never going to be a moment where it's about me. It's about this amazing company. So for me, it's different. I mean, again, people get involved with producing for different reasons, and I've done both. I've produced first, so it could be all about me, and now I'm involved as an executive director because it's all about this company and the 49-year legacy that I am so honored and proud to hopefully keep going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because when you look at the success of other people, you could break it down into this formula. And it's not just about replicating the formula. You have to be able to understand each of the components and then apply that to your circumstances. And I'm sure you've been a part of productions that went well and productions maybe that didn't go so well. So, what do you think are those components that determine the success of a production?
Wow. Teamwork, that sounds so basic. It's just very interesting to watch how theater has changed, especially, we'll say since 1990, right? How it's changed since we were first starting out. Theater, it's teamwork in a family, right? And years ago, it was very much that. Everybody was in the trenches, whether it was helping build the set or bringing in costumes. I mean, I remember literally we needed not a chalkboard, one of those boards where you put things out. Oh, I can't remember the word.
Corkboard?
Old age. Corkboard, something like that. Yes. But it's called something else. Anyhow, keep this in, old age. But I literally lifted it off my kitchen, wall to take it to be on the set, and like bills were still stuck on it, like the electric bill and stuff. And at the end of the run I was like, oh gosh, we've got to pay these. But we were all in it together. And now I see a lot of what can you do for me as a part of what can we do together. And I don't mean that about money or people bringing in their costumes. I don't mean it like that. It's just, it is that group effort to want to, produce this art, and I think the best art comes from that, when you have everybody there who want to be there and want to be a part of this magic. I mean, theater's, it's magic. It really is. Every night, you get to attempt to create magic, and having everybody in that same thing, I think that's really important. And I don't see that all the time now.
Yeah, it does feel like the landscape has changed. I just think there's so much emphasis on the business side of the arts, and that just kind of impacts the artistic value as well. I mean, that plus it feels like there's a lack of discipline in the arts. I mean, it's not like you need to have a certification to be an artist.
No, I didn't go to college.
Plumbers need certifications. Architects, they take their tests. My brother's an architect, so it's very easy to pretend to be an actor or even an artist for that matter. So, in order to combat this and instill good habits into people, what do you think actors should do to adjust themselves to fit this formula for success?
Be prepared. I mean, honestly, being prepared is huge. I work with also with high school students. One of the favorite things I do is I direct high school students, and it is that it's when you've agreed to do a show, be prepared. Again, in the old days, there were not conflicts. Now everybody, I'm doing a show, but I have these 500 conflicts that I can't come to rehearsal except when the moon is high and the sun is out. And it's kind of like, well, no, if you signed up to do this, yes, once in a while there's a conflict. So being prepared, listening, being able to adjust. Every director you're going to work with is going to be probably completely different. Right? And I see, again, a lot of folks come in and go, well, this is how I work. I work like this. This is how I learned to do it. But not everybody's different. So to be able to get in there and still keep the integrity of what you're going to do, but be able to work, with others, with how they're working. And I mean, be professional. I mean, it's really simple. Learn your lines, do your job, be a part of the team. And yeah, I think it's that simple, honestly.
Well, as my good friend and second guest, Camilla Maxwell, once said, show up, do the work, don't be a dick. I mean, it just seems simpler when ego isn't a part of the equation.
Again, going back to what I'm saying, even about being producer, it's not about me. It's about all of us, right? And I think that that's really important. And again, going back to what I was saying about the high school and the students I work with, it's also even teaching them the fact that it's not about the lead, right? You need the ensemble are as just as big and as important as the lead as is the usher and the props person and again, I think it sounds cliche, but it's true. Like if we're not all in this together, we can't do what we want to do. And I believe that both professionally and educationally with doing theater.
I'm glad you said that, because taking a look at all of your experiences, you started as an actor, you created opportunities by being a producer, and then you added directing to the mix, and you have all these tools on your tool belt. And it's nice to see how all those things can relate to each other, but ultimately how they come together. So looking at your entire journey, what would you say is one of the most important things that you've discovered? Or better yet, what do you want people to take away from this interview based on what you've learned over the years?
Well, it's interesting because, again, in theater, if you would have asked me, 30 years ago, is this where I would be? I would have said no, right? You don't know your journey. And I think, especially in the arts and theater, the more you can do and the more you're willing to learn, the better your journey, right? Or the more interesting your journey. If I were to sit there and go, I'm just going to act, I would have missed out on a lot of opportunities. So I think being open to learning new things and being willing to try new things for all and I've seen this happen, is people who started out as an actor, but now are the best stage managers I've ever seen, and they're organized and they're this, and they love doing that more than they did acting, and they just happened to stage manage once because nobody had a stage manager, right? So it's keeping those things open and being willing to learn as much as you can in theater. And you're going to learn things you like and things you don't like, right? That you want to do. And I feel that's the same way is to continue learning is by seeing and doing, right? I think I try to see as much theater as I possibly can, and I'm pretty successful at that. I would say during the season I see about 90% of what's going on in Buffalo, and that's a lot of theater. But I look at that as a learning experience, right? Whether it's a particular show that I like or I don't like, but I'm learning something every time I see it. And as a producer, I get to see a lot of actors that I might not get to see, who might not come through the door to audition for us or might not get to see their work. So I think that's really important.
Well, for those that don't know about Shakespeare in Delaware Park and some of the other things that you do, what's the best way for people to continue to follow your journey?
Well, Shakespeare in Delaware Park, we're celebrating our 49th season this year. So Comedy of Errors runs until August 18th. We're very busy already getting ready for our 50th, which is next year. So there's going to be a lot of fun and interesting things happening throughout the next year and a half. So people should follow ShakespeareInDelawarePark.org for that. I'm personally in a few shows this season. First up is POTUS over at the Kavinoki. Then I'm doing this little show. I think Tony Grande is in it. I think. That's
right. I'm doing another show with the lovely Lisa Ludwig.
Yeah, so we're going to be on stage for that. And then I close out the season over at Ujima doing a play called Everybody, which I'm really looking forward to. And then in between there, I have my two high schools, Sacred Heart Academy. We're doing The Wizard of Oz this year. a great show. That'll be in November. And then in February, Amherst High School does their show as well, but I don't know what we're doing yet. So it's going to be a fun yet busy year.
Excellent. Well, that concludes another episode of Small Talk with Tony. I want to thank my guest Lisa for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. You can check out all the latest episodes by visiting us at tonyvideo.com/smalltalk. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram where you can get the latest news. See you next time.
Choose ain't really up to you.